Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having a fantastic Thursday, wherever you may be across this great country or this great land. Let me give you a little bit of skin there. I am getting ready to do a rehearsal for Lock It In, which will be back hopefully sooner rather than later. So as soon as I finish here, I'll be hopping over to do a TV hit. But I appreciate all of you. I hope you enjoyed the show this morning, and we have got a lot to dive into. So I want to start here, all right? I think we need to acknowledge, as we continue, that the coronavirus outbreak in Florida and Texas and California and Arizona is going to be less significant combined than the disaster that took place in New York. And I keep waiting for all the media out here to circle back around and say, you know what? New York was a disaster. Using it as a model for any other part of the United States is no longer valid. Even if Texas and California and Florida end up with more cases than New York, they are going to have a fraction of the deaths from all of those states as what happened in New York. And I keep waiting. I keep thinking to myself, surely the mainstream media, which is filled with a bunch of not very smart people, is just going to look at the data and they're going to say, wait a minute. Florida, Texas, and California have soon to be the same number or more confirmed cases than New York, and they have had nowhere near the impact as New York and nowhere near the impact in New Jersey and Connecticut and Massachusetts and everywhere else. And do you know why that is? Because those states all followed Andrew Cuomo's disastrous lead. And so if that is the case, and it is, the data is really, really important here. The data tells us that, in fact, the worst case scenarios are not in play. That even if there are massive outbreaks in the biggest states in the country, the death rate is going to be a fraction of what happened in New York and New Jersey in particular. In fact, the death rate in New York is triple the death rate in Sweden. It's over twice the death rate in the United Kingdom, which has currently the highest death rate in the world of any major country. In fact, if New York had had the same death rate as California, Texas, and Florida, the average of those three, only about 6,000 people would have died in New York total, instead of 30,000 plus. So when are we actually going to acknowledge the real story here? When are we going to acknowledge that the real danger is just incompetent leadership in a state? If a state's governor does a decent job, the death rate is not going to be that substantial. The CDC, by the way, says there have been 24 million to 96 million people infected. And so when you actually look at the Corona Bro community, it's like they won't actually be willing to look at the legitimate data here. So it's just insane to me. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. That is the coronavirus update as it continues. Florida, Texas, Arizona, and California, everything's going to be fine there. Major League Baseball returns tonight. Got a game in D.C., the Nationals up against the Yankees, and then all the way across the coast in L.A. at Chavez Ravine, we got the Dodgers hosting the Giants. Here's my question for everybody out there. Is the number one story come Friday morning going to be Major League Baseball returning or some small measure of number of players kneeling? I am fascinated to see what the number one story coming out of this is, because I'm afraid it's going to be Major League Baseball players kneeling. And if that's the case, it means after all this wait, after all this time of waiting around for sports to return, sports are going to return and be the most political that they have ever been in the history of the country. We can't just kick back and have a beer and watch a game. Everybody on the field has to make a statement about politics in order for them to be able to play the game. I don't think athletes have any real sense about business. And by and large, I don't think they understand that they are alienating some of their fans by deciding to embrace politics. And so I'm going to be curious to see how all these leagues do going forward if they are going to go full on political, because you can't escape politics right now. And I think the thing that sports fans want to see when they turn on sports is something that is completely not political during the game. If you love politics, you can watch MSNBC or CNN or Fox News. You can spend all day on social media arguing with people. If you want to just be entertained, you just want to sit back and have a beer and just be entertained. And I think they are going to alienate a huge number of their overall fan base. I think it's going to be an unmitigated disaster when you actually look at the way everybody is going to break down here. All right, a couple of other stories that I think are crazy, okay? This is wild. Rupp Arena. This is why you can't negotiate with the woke community. This is why it makes absolutely no sense to negotiate with the woke community, because they're never satisfied. The only reason why the woke community exists is because they're perpetually unhappy. And if you haven't noticed, right now, the black faculty at the University of Kentucky has demanded that Rupp Arena's name be changed. And that as a result, they are not happy because Adolph Rupp has a racist past. Well, go figure. Adolph Rupp was a coach in the South in the 1940s and 50s. His name, by God, was Adolph. It's maybe a good sign that it was a long time ago, because basically no one is named Adolf anymore. In fact, Adolf Hitler killed the name Adolf. In order to be named Adolf, you had to be born before World War II actually began and before the Nazis. There is no one in the world that I am aware of who is now named Adolf entirely because of Hitler. All right? So, Adolph Rupp is an old dude. He's so old that his name is Adolf. And so, not surprisingly, he had racist beliefs like every single other person who lived in the 1930s and the 1940s and the 1950s. All right? He also had a tremendous amount of success. And where I think this becomes interesting is, this is just proving my point. The woke community is never happy. There's always something that they are offended by in history, because they are perpetually judging present day the past by standards of the present day. And as a result, this is what all the tearing down of the monuments is like. This is what all of the renaming is about. This is about a destruction of history. So I am firmly in the camp that Kentucky should not rename Rupp Arena. But I am going to be fascinated to see this debate play out, because I think the vast majority of University of Kentucky graduates, I think the vast majority of people in the state of Kentucky are going to be opposed to it. In fact, I think Mitch McConnell, who is a big University of Louisville guy, if my recollection holds, I think he could probably win the Senate race without having to have an opinion on a single thing other than whether Rupp Arena's name should be changed. I think this is something that 85 to 90% of the state of Kentucky believes that there's no reason to actually change the name of the state. And I think ultimately that this will be an issue. Now, look, somebody just said, I happened to look there, you didn't go to Kentucky. Why do you care? Why do you care? Well, I care because every time you give in to the woke community, you set the precedent that if people claim enough, that they complain enough, that you will change things that shouldn't otherwise be changed. This is a significant issue. I care about the precedent of appeasing all of the woke losers by perpetually, constantly adjusting our standards for what's acceptable to try to make them happy, when in the end, they are not going to actually have any sort of happiness because it's not about the change. It's about the power that they gain by demanding the change. And the fact that people don't understand this drives me crazy. Look, I'm not a big NRA guy. I'm not a big gun guy. I don't sit around with guns. I was born in the South. I was raised with guns. I support the Second Amendment, okay? But I'm not a huge gun guy. What I respect is the fact that the NRA calls everybody on this BS. The NRA recognizes that the goal of people who want gun control is not actually to have gun control, it's to eliminate the Second Amendment, all right? And they believe that if at any point you allow and acquiesce and attempt to appease people who disagree with you, they're never satisfied. They never say, oh, okay, now that you've made this change, we're cool with the Second Amendment. No, their goal is to slowly chip away at your foundational rights until there's nothing left of the foundational right. And that's what woke people do. That's what they are about. It's about power and a reason to legitimize their existence in the political arena, not about actually anything that leads to constructive change. In fact, taking away something from someone else is actually the worst way to actually build an agenda and build an alliance, because all it does is alienate you and create more people who disagree with you as opposed to trying to construct. Again, constructing is hard. Destructing is easy. Much of what goes on in American public policy today is about destruction. There's very little creation, okay? And I think it's important in your mind to be thinking, am I creating a better situation, or am I just trying to tear down something that someone else likes? Because much of what goes on in terms of cultural battles today is about destroying things that some people like, not because it's better for you, but because you want to take from them. This is important. So look, I am not a dyed-in-the-wool University of Kentucky fan, as many of you know who are listening to this right now. But if you set the precedent that if there was at any point a racist coach that had success, that his name has to come off of anything associated with them, this is a never-ending process because there are many coaches that would be involved, and ultimately you wipe out much of history, okay? I don't believe there is anything to be gained here by making this decision, okay? So I'm going to block this guy because he's not making good arguments, and he's upset because I just dunked on him with the why do you care stupid argument. The why do you care is because I care about the precedent that is set in this country as it regards to history, whether or not I am a particular fan of one of the individuals involved in history. And I fundamentally repudiate the idea of cancel culture and will combat it until my dying day and until my dying breath, okay? So this in and of itself is really, really easy to analyze. Seattle. I want to give credit to Seattle. They didn't do very well with Chaz. They still are protesting there, which is a bit of a ridiculous situation, but at least something positive has finally come out of the city of Seattle. They have actually named a new NHL team, the Seattle Kraken, I believe is how you pronounce it, and they released a video that was absolutely spectacular in terms of announcing the new addition to the Seattle NHL franchise. I thought it was superb. You know, if you make social media happy, you have to have done a really, really good job. I loved their hype video or whatever you want to call it. Solid work all around by the Seattle Kraken. Pac-12. Corona bros are sad. Corona bros are mad. Let me give you my college football update. The Pac-12 has got a fall plan that was leaked. The season would start on September 19th. There would be 10 games played in conference, and on top of that, they would have a 3-week flexible schedule to play the Pac-12 title game. Why is this significant? Because the Pac-12 is the 5th most likely team in college football to actually play. In order: SEC, Big 12, ACC, Big 10, Pac-12. If the Pac-12 is putting out a new plan to allow a full season to be played, this is a significant factor in terms of the return of college football. So too is the state of Alabama saying, hey, we're playing our high school football totally normal. We're not going to change anything. Texas playing high school football. Georgia playing high school football. Florida playing high school football. All right? All of them, beyond a shadow of a doubt, are going to be, and I believe will be, instrumental in returning college football to play as well. If you're playing high school football, you got to be able to play, and you're playing pro football, it's hard to argue that you can't in any way be able to do college football as well. So this is going to be a big deal. This is going to be important to follow, okay? So the Pac-12 has a plan to come back. We're going to play college football. TCU, speaking of the Big 12, TCU not just planning to play a full schedule of college football, they're actually moving a game week earlier. Reports out of Dallas, I believe it's the Fort Worth Star-Telegram newspaper I was just reading, TCU is now planning to play a game on August 29th. That's the week before college football is supposed to start. So rather than move their season back like the Pac-12 is thinking about doing it, TCU in the Big 12 is thinking about playing a week earlier than anticipated. Good for the Big 12. This ties in with the University of Texas expecting 50% attendance. I love the idea of college football season being here by August the 29th. TCU week 0. We'll see who actually ends up to play. By the way, I think the data, if you're out there and you're one of these data people and you actually look at the facts, the idea of moving to the spring makes no sense. Because spring in football, which is actually defined as, January, February, March, is actually when the cold and flu season is at its height. So if there is going to be another wave of the coronavirus, that's actually when it's going to exist. It would be smarter to move the season closer to the summer, I think, than it would be to move the season back. But I think it's crazy. I think it's absolutely crazy, the idea of the spring, and I don't think spring football is going to happen. I think college football is going to happen in general. The Washington Redskins, or I should say the team that used to be known as the Washington Redskins, has decided that they can't come up with an actual name for their team. Therefore, they are going to be known, and this is not a joke, as the Washington Football Team. So for this season, proving how rushed and ridiculous this idea was, the Redskins are not even going to have a mascot. They are simply going to be known as the Washington Football Team, which is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. They will be selling Washington FT gear. Maybe they'll just stick with Washington FT and be done with the idea of actually having a mascot. But this is such an indication that this was a panicked and rapid move that I think was brought about by the Washington Post investigation that they knew was coming, and they thought they would get less criticism, which I think was honestly true, even though these things are totally disconnected, by changing the name of the franchise, even though it had nothing to do with the sexual harassment culture or anything that was written about by the Washington Post. But that story basically disappeared because as soon as it came out, there was, it was already been talked about so much, and the expectation was it was going to be so much more substantial that it basically disappeared because they'd already fired everybody by the time the story came out. Finally, Adam Silver, NBA commissioner. NBA is entitled, as their commissioner, to do whatever they want when it comes to, Adam Silver is, when it comes to his personal political beliefs. But I personally think that it's actually a bad message to send for the commissioner of a league to be endorsing a political candidate. Adam Silver made a maximum political donation to Joe Biden, clearly saying, I hate Donald Trump. I have no interest in him being president. I'm fine with anybody exercising their political rights, making donations, going out and supporting whoever you would like. I personally think it's a bad move for a league commissioner to make a choice as to who he believes should be the president of the United States in such a public fashion. If I were a commissioner, I would not make donations to either political party because I would recognize that whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, I might be working with them and it might be in the best interests of my league to be able to have a good relationship with whoever the president is. Now, individual team owners, I can understand that decision. I think it's a little bit different. Individual players, I think it's a little bit different there as well. But if you are the commissioner and you represent the entirety of a league, I think it's a bad look to donate to the Democrats or to donate to the Republicans, because your league might have to be working with whoever wins. And so I'd make a little bit of a difference if you happen to have a personal friendship with somebody, like if one of your old college buddies or one of your old high school buddies, or certainly if it's somebody that's in your family, or if it were, let's say, a former NBA player, like if Bill Bradley were running for president, I think it would make sense for the league commissioner maybe to donate to him. But to make a decision like this, and by the way, Adam Silver did it when the Hillary Clinton election was going on too. He voted for Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump, and now he's voting for donating to Joe Biden, and he doesn't even know who Joe Biden's running mate's going to be. Joe Biden's going to be 78. What you're basically saying is this league, and I think it's true, the NBA has no interest in the Republican Party whatsoever. And I think it's a really bad idea to write off half the public if you're in the entertainment business. I just think it is. If you're trying to appeal to everyone, a huge percentage of people who buy NBA season tickets voted for Donald Trump. A huge percentage of people who buy NBA luxury suites vote for Donald Trump. I think it's a really bad move by Adam Silver to commit to any one political party. I think it's a bad look. And I would say that if Roger Goodell does it, I don't think the commissioner of the NFL should be donating money. Personally, I wouldn't do it if I were him. I wouldn't do it if I were the commissioner of the NHL, Major League Baseball, any of it. I would try to be apolitical and work with both sides. All right. I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. Thank you for tripling our audience on podcasts since March. It's unheard of. Our audience on the Outkick the Coverage podcast has tripled since March in terms of downloads. Never seen anything like it. There's not a single sports show in the country that is even approaching that. That's because of you guys, because you guys are out there saying you need to listen to Clay Travis. You need to check out what he's saying every morning. You need to watch this show. It's incredible. Go sign up for our Outkick VIP. Thousands of you have done it so far. This is the last week where I can guarantee you an autographed copy of my book. We're already out, but I appreciate the thousands of you who have come and signed up already. VIP message board, VIP events, the ability to comment on all the articles, the ability to call the Outkick the Coverage radio show and get right to the VIP line. All of that is fantastic, and that's because of you guys. I appreciate all of you. I got to go get ready for an audition for our television show now to get ready for season 3. Kisses, DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. I will see you guys. Thank you. See y'all. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. Have great Thursdays. See ya.